Friends, we are watching in real time the peeling back of the onion, if you will, to expose corruption in our federal government at levels I don't know that I've ever seen. I don't think many of us at this point trust the different bureaucracies of the federal government. I don't care what they are. I don't care if it's the grape testers that are going to see if the grapes are grapier enough, or obviously to the extreme of the ATF and the FBI. Don't trust an insurance company with your self-defense, guys. These guys are the ultimate self-defense program offered by a law firm. This is literally on the front page of their website. These guys are going to cover you whether you are charged or convicted of a criminal act, take a plea deal, use an illegal weapon or firearm, hope you're not. They provide coverage in all 50 states, have a 24/7 emergency line. 100% of your criminal and civil defense fees are covered through trial. If you go there now and sign up, you will get $50 off your one-time sign-up fee. That's $50 off the $100 sign-up fee. Go there now, use my code FTATF. Again, that's attorneysonretainer.us. There's literally no accountability at any level in the federal government, and I've always seen it like this, and I'm sure you guys have too. At the local government level, there's a little bit of accountability, like city halls and things like that, police juries, county commissioners. Then you get to that state level, and there's a little bit less accountability. You get to the federal level, and there's none. You can't lose your job. Doesn't matter how bad you screw up. And what we witnessed today with the testimony of congressmen, senators alike, grilling the FBI and the new Secret Service director, there was a lot of posturing, if you will. I want to go over some of that now. I want you to recognize before we get into this, especially from the Secret Service standpoint, you tell me if you don't notice a certain level of arrogance and air about these people, to the point that they feel like, and know in some cases, that they are untouchable and cannot lose their jobs. I want you to watch new director Ronald Rowe as he ducks and dodges questioning, and he certainly throws the Pennsylvania local law enforcement, the entire staff and crew, under the bus in this video. I mean, when I tell you he throws them under the bus, he should probably be arrested for assault as badly as he does it in this video.
You said very, very clearly that you can't defend why that building with the shooter on top of it was not better covered. You were very clear. You cannot defend that. So my question to you is, my understanding is that there's a detailed site survey that is done prior to an event to identify potential threat points. So talk to me about that site survey. I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it now after action. And how did that site survey get approved when it was so clear that that was a major threat from that building?
Thank you, Senator. So our Pittsburgh field office did the advance. During that advance, not only were they discussing amongst themselves about mitigating the line of sight, but also they were discussing with other agencies that were supporting it. Our counter snipers met with their counterparts. The team lead and team lead met. They walked the site. They identified the AGR building. And if I may, Senator, if I could point out something right now, if I may, and we will place this for the record, but this is the point of view. This is from the second floor of the AGR building. This point of view is the point of view where the counter sniper team locally was posted. The gold arrow indicates where the shooter fired from. Looking left. Why was the assailant not seen? When we were told that building was going to be covered, that there had been a face-to-face that afternoon, that our team leads met, this was the view. Let me show you another view, Senator. B. This view is a reenactment by one of my agents, laying flat there was a 5-inch rise on the middle of that roof. The assailant would have had to present his bore over that to get his shot off. The view underneath reflects the perspective that he would have had. Again, I call your attention back to the first exhibit if they'd have looked left. Give me C. This is what our counter-sniper team saw. Shooter, no elbows. You barely make out the crown of his head. Below it, the assailant up prone. And let me just tell you, our counter-sniper, this individual, I know him. I consider him a friend. He has covered me operationally in conflict zones. And when I did my time on the president's detail, he exemplifies the courage, the skill, and the ability to respond under great stress in such short time to neutralize a threat and prevent further loss of life. Getting back to your question, Senator, these were discussions that were had between the Pittsburgh field office, the local counterparts, and everyone supporting that visit that day. And that's why when I laid in that position, I could not, and I will not, and I cannot understand why there was not better coverage, or at least somebody looking at that roof line when that's where they were posted.
So you see how many times he threw them under the bus, right? He claims this air of superiority and looks down his nose on them. And I was actually looking at Jared's live stream of this earlier today, Guns and Gadgets, and he made a point that I think everybody was thinking. These people at the Secret Service level rely on local law enforcement whenever they go to their communities and provide protection for whoever the protectees are. They're going to lose that trust now based on what this man just said. He is throwing everything at the feet of the Pennsylvania law enforcement. Now, I'm not saying Pennsylvania law enforcement did everything right. What I'm telling you is these people in the federal government, the Secret Service, have already been exposed as to not knowing what's going on, as to not attending meetings, as to purposely being so arrogant that they don't include some of the local law enforcement in their big shot meetings. Oh, this is only for the big time guys. We don't let those guys in. Now you're starting to see where that arrogance is starting to pay off, if you want to call it that. Now, next up is Josh Hawley. Now, I want you to witness the roid rage and the new Director Rowe in this video. He had a little bit of fake outrage in the last video that looked like he was going to be raging a little bit, but in this one, boy, he really goes off the chart. It makes you wonder if the reason why he wasn't the acting director of Secret Service before this, not only the fact that he's got junk in the front, if you know what I mean, that they needed a DEI hire to be the director, that's why they had Cheadle in there, but his reason might also be that he's a little bit of an anger management issue.
Is dead, that other Americans were critically wounded. Isn't that enough mission failure for you to say that the person who decided that that building should not be in the security perimeter probably ought to be stepped down?
Senator, I think you're using the word decided, and I think we need to allow the investigation play out to include.
Who did make the decision then? If it wasn't the lead site agent, who made the decision not to put that in the security perimeter?
Senator, you're zeroing in on one particular agent. I want to find out exactly what was the entire decision process. So I think I want to be neutral and make sure that we get to the bottom of it and interview everybody in order to determine if there was more than one person who perhaps exercised bad judgment.
Well, sure. My question is, why don't you relieve everybody of duty who made bad judgment? So, yeah, you're right. I am zeroing in on somebody. I'm trying to find somebody who's accountable here. And you're telling me that the person who made the decision not to include this in the perimeter has not been relieved of duty. What about the person who's in charge of the interoperability of radio frequencies between local law enforcement and Secret Service? Has that person been relieved of duty?
No, Senator, because interoperability is a challenge, is a greater challenge than just one person. On that day, we had a counterpart system. It failed
As the
spectacularly.
person who made the decision to send Donald Trump onto stage knowing that you had a security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir, they haven't.
As the person who decided not to pull the former president off of stage when you knew that, in your words, the locals were working a serious security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir. Again, I refer you back to my original answer that we are investigating this through a mission assurance. And as opposed to zeroing in on one,
what more do you
or
need
two
to
individuals,
investigate
we want
to
find
know
out exactly what the
what more do you
decision-making
need to
process
investigate
was.
to know that there were critical enough failures that some individuals ought to be held accountable? I mean, what more do you need to know?
What I need to know is exactly what happened, and I need my investigators to do their job. And I cannot,
A lot of people didn't do their
I cannot
jobs.
put my thumb on the scale. Otherwise,
What do you mean put your thumb on the scale?
You're asking me, Senator, to completely make a rush to judgment about somebody failing. I acknowledge this was a failure of the
Is it
Secret
not
Service.
prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
Then
just like you
fire
have.
somebody to
And I will
hold them
tell you,
accountable.
Senator, I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity and not rush to judgment and put people
I can't believe
unfairly
that you
persecuted.
are unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly,
We've got people
sir,
who are
we
dead.
have to be able to have a proper investigation into this, Senator.
You said earlier that you've got to make sure that your protocols are followed, and unless there's a protocol violation, people wouldn't be disciplined. I would just say to you, I don't really care that much about your protocols. I think if your protocols don't provide for the fact that when a former president is shot, when an American is killed, when other rally goers, innocent people who just showed up on the day, when they are shot at and critically wounded, if that isn't a protocol violation prima facie, you should revise your protocols.
Senator, I think this is where you and I agree. This was a failure, and we will get to the bottom of it.
Well, I hope you're going to do something about it. Let me ask you something else. The Real Clear Politics reports this morning that you were directly involved in denying additional security resources and personnel, including counter snipers, not just to this event, but over the last 2 years, that President Trump's team repeatedly asked for these additional resources, and you personally were involved in denying them. Is that true?
Senator, as I stated earlier, that is not true.
So you never denied any resources to former President Trump's team?
No, not me. No, sir.
And you weren't involved in any of that? You
No,
were never
sir,
involved
I
in
was
the decision making?
No, sir, I was not.
Let me ask you just one or two other things here quickly. Well, whistleblowers tell me that, in fact, law enforcement were stationed to be on that roof and that law enforcement abandoned their post because it was too hot. Is that accurate?
Senator, I have heard that as well. Again, they posted up inside. And I think moving forward, as I said earlier, we're going to ensure that state and local counter snipers are on roofs.
But do you know if someone was supposed to be on the roof? Do you know if someone was in fact? That's what the whistleblowers tells me. That may or may not be accurate. Do you know that to be the fact? Was somebody posted to the roof, local law enforcement or whomever?
I do not know that to be a fact.
Well, can I ask you why you don't know that?
Again, Senator, we are looking at this, and they should have been on that roof. And the fact that they were in the building is something that I'm still trying to understand.
I just want to express my frustration, Director, that 17 days or whatever it's been, that whistleblowers are telling us more than you are, and you don't know, you haven't ascertained if there was supposed to be law enforcement on the roof. That seems like a pretty basic fact. I'm also told that local law enforcement suppliers offered the Secret Service drones, and you declined them. Is that true?
So, Senator, one, I've been very transparent and forthcoming.
Your agency has not been transparent and forthcoming, so please, let's not go there.
I have been forthcoming, sir.
That remains to be seen. You've been on the job a few days. So far, you've fired nobody. Now, the drones.
Thank you,
Yes,
Were
sir.
you offered drones?
Senator
So there
Hawley.
was an offer to fly a drone on that day.
And why did you deny it?
Again, I think the ability of local law enforcement to provide an asset, we probably should have taken them up on it if it was offered.
Now, the drone issue was certainly a point of contention. They said in the testimony earlier this day that they couldn't fly, talking about Secret Service, they could not fly their drone earlier because they didn't have a secure enough network and were reliant on the local network in order to fly their drone. So they were offered by local to fly a drone, refused, could not fly their own drone, so they didn't fly one, and their excuse for not flying their own drone was because of the local Wi-Fi connection. Yet, guess who flew a drone that day? The shooter, or the alleged shooter. Apparently, his $200 or $300 drone worked just fine, but we have a $1 billion agency here that can't manage to fly a drone and refuses local free help and doesn't take it. Again, you're creating questions that you're either showing complete ineptitude or you're showing complicity. John Kennedy brought up a really interesting point. He began a line of questioning that I wasn't anticipating.
Did the FBI just settle 2 lawsuits, one wholly, one in part, in which the FBI agreed to give Peter Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Lisa Page $800,000?
It's my understanding, Senator, that the Department of Justice was involved in that, not the FBI.
The FBI had nothing to do with it?
There may have been consultation with our general counsel's office, but
Does the FBI have to sign off on it?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe so, but I would want to confirm that.
I would like you to, this would be the same Lisa Page who said to Mr. Strzok, quote, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right. To which Mr. Strzok said, quote, no, he won't. We will stop it. That's the Peter Strzok and Lisa Page I'm talking about. I need to know if the FBI signed off on this lawsuit.
We will
on
get
this
that
settlement.
answer for you, Senator.
And then I need to know who signed off on it. Did you sign off on it?
I absolutely did not and would never sign off on something
Did Chris
like that.
Wray sign off on it, the settlement?
I don't believe he did,
Okay. Did you don't know what?
nor do I think he would have.
You need to let me know who signed off on this, if anyone at the FBI. So it was Merrick Garland who agreed to do this. Is that right?
I don't, Senator, I do not know.
Well, hell,
who signed
somebody
off
had
on
to
that.
agree to it. I've settled a lawsuit before. The client's got to agree to it. You're the client. All right.
Understood. I'm gonna direct in to the Department of Justice to answer
All right.
those
Get
questions.
me
That's-
that information if you would.
This FBI guy doesn't know who signed off on it, whether it was Ray or anybody else. This guy also made these statements earlier. Remember, we put a video out, I think it was last week, on the social media of Crooks on Gab back when he was 17 years old or something like that. Remember, we talked about the post that he made. At that time, he had only made 9 posts. Those posts were all very defensive of Biden and his organization and his goals. Everything from very, very, very pro-illegal immigration to just propping Joe up at every single turn. This FBI agent today, citing these same sources, says that there were all these other posts made by him, hundreds in fact, from much earlier than 2021. I think he's going as far back as 2017, maybe.
The account, which is believed to be associated with the shooter in about the 2019-2020 timeframe. There were over 700 comments posted from this account. Some of these comments, if ultimately attributable to the shooter, appear to reflect anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes, to espouse political violence, and are described as extreme in nature. While the investigative team is still working to verify this account to determine if it did in fact belong to the shooter, we believe it important to share and note it today, particularly given the general absence of other information to date from social media and other sources of information that reflect on the shooter's potential motive and mindset. These are the facts, in part, that the investigation has revealed to date.
He's saying that this killer, this shooter, had posts that were anti-Semitic and anti-immigration, anti-illegal immigration. They're not immigrants, they're illegal aliens, but they were calling them that. They're talking about him being anti-immigration and anti-Semitic, as if that matters. These people are trying to set a narrative. This is why no one trusts the FBI. again, based on Kennedy's questions about wanting to know who approved these payments to these two FBI agents that said that they were going to make sure that Trump would never be president. I think that's important. I think someone has some explaining to do, because that was not just one person that thought they could prevent Trump from ever being president. This is from an organization. This guy thinks he's speaking on behalf of it. And this guy is now running cover for crooks trying to paint him as a conservative when he was clearly, based on his most recent social post, he was clearly a pro-Biden, anti-GOP person. Yet, we have them running cover for him. I don't understand the differences in that. You have to make me understand why the FBI, people who their job is supposed to be to deduce evidence and look at it in a certain way and arrive at a sensible conclusion, not go back and do something that doesn't make any sense. And if you're doing something that doesn't make sense, explain to me why. And they never explain why. Today's testimony did nothing, in my opinion, to solidify any additional trust that we should be giving anyone in the federal government. If you ask me, the Secret Service was probably one of the last remaining organizations that somebody had a certain level of respect for. It's gone now. No one has any respect for these people. These people are liars. They are covering up for something. There's two things that they're clearly covering up. There's no doubt they're covering up, right? So let's look at what they're covering up. They are either covering up something that they either allowed or made happen, you figure it out, or they're covering up for being so stupid and incompetent that you have to think we've just been lucky for all these years that somebody else hasn't been murdered while they're at the helm, right? You have to think that. You have to think that all this time nobody's tried. Because we have this silly little goofy 20-year-old. I don't care how smart he was. Aren't these people supposed to be the best of the best that we have working in Secret Service and the FBI? We had a 20-year-old who fixes meals for old people in an old folks' home, defeat every possible ring and level of security from the bottom to the top of the Secret Service and the FBI, defeated them every step of the way, defeated them whether it be with a drone, whether it be getting a gun in there, whether it be getting on top of a roof, whether it be accessing the roof, whether it be actually getting shots off, whether it be actually hitting the protectee. He literally, a 20-year-old meal preparer at an old folks' home, defeated every single level of security by the Secret Service. That is shameful.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's so